This is TWiT.
Hey, we have a really good guest this week. I'm very excited to say hello to Mike Masnick. You know him. He's been on our shows before as the founder and editor at techdirt.com. He has created card games. He is the author of the Moderation Speed Run, which Linda Yaccarino has now come to the end of. We'll talk about that in a little bit. He's on Blue Sky's board. He is on Blue Sky itself as M. Masnick, M-A-S-N-I-C-K. It's great to see you, Mike.
Yeah, great to be here. You said we had a wonderful guest, and I was wondering who it was.
It's you. You're the guest. And the reason, the reason I wanted to get you on is because you wrote this amazing article a month ago. Mm-hmm. Stop begging billionaires to fix software. Build your own. Which is funny because this was the philosophy in the earliest days of computing.
Yep.
Write all your own software. Don't let the other guys do it. I think until very recently, that wasn't a reasonable thing to expect a normal person to do. But now, do you have a coding background?
Not really. No. I mean, I think I
studied
basically
at school.
I didn't. I was self-taught, but I haven't touched code since the 1990s. So
Fortran, eh?
It was a little post Fortran.
It was probably C or Pascal.
Little C, little PHP stuff, and some other stuff there. But I mean, my coding knowledge is so out of date that it doesn't. It effectively, I have no coding knowledge whatsoever.
Good. Because you came as an open book, as a blank slate to the idea of vibe coding. You wanted to write your own knowledge management system, your own to-do list kind of thing. Yeah.
And I had played around. I'd played around with a different app I just was trying to explore, and then was thinking about, because I've used a bunch of different sort of task management apps over the years, like many people. I'm sort of, have been historically on the hunt for the perfect task management app that works with my brain and I don't get sick of using after a week and it's overloaded with tasks I never get to.
Well, the canard is that people would rather, spend time working on the process than actually managing their tasks.
Yes, of course.
You've taken this to the nth degree because now you're writing your own. You're writing your own system.
Yeah. I mean,
that would have stayed on my to-do list forever. So I never would have created the to-do to pick up the to-dos.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of what inspired me was that for the last 2 or 3 years, I had been using a sort of a task management tool, but it's different than most others. It was originally called Accomplice, but now it's called Intend. And it has a very different take on how you handle tasks. And that is entirely focused on just what you're going to work on today. And the guy who wrote it has a very strong opinion about how it's about intentions, not tasks. And it has a really strong focus for that kind of thing. And I found it to be useful some of the time, but it was sort of 60% of how my brain worked, which was more than most task management tools and Todoist and all these other ones, which were I would have to change to make those work for me. Whereas with Intend, I could sort of get closer to what I wanted. But then it just occurred to me, everybody's talking about vibe coding apps. And I said, what if I could take that basis of the aspects of Intend that I like, but then build all the other features in around it. And it was just an experiment. I actually started with 4 different vibe coding platforms and gave them each the same prompt and sort of saw what they came up with before committing to one and sort of really building out a tool that is just wholly custom to myself and works. I've added, since I wrote that piece, I've added a bunch of features. I'm currently fighting with the vibe coding software to try and get it to do one other thing, which for the last few days has not been working, much to my frustration. I mean, I basically built a task management tool that I love. It's exactly what I need. And as I keep using it, I discover maybe I discover a little thing here or there and I just, just tell the tool hey, fix this.
Well, first of all, I guess I should ask what the process was. Did you write a spec? I mean, you knew what you were looking for, or did you want to write it out first?
Yeah, if I had been really thoughtful about it, like I probably would have been more careful and written a spec. And like in retrospect, I was like, oh, I should have really sat down and written like a full, requirement stock. But I didn't. I just wrote like a paragraph, and I said, this is kind of what I'm looking for.
That's more vibey.
Yeah, it was very vibey.
Spec is so old. You'll know when you see it, you'll change it, right?
Lately, I've been seeing a lot of people say the best way to use something like Claude Code is not to launch into coding, but instead write a fairly long document about kind of expectations and what you're looking for. So, but I think what I've done is exactly what you did, Mike, which is, all right, let's type a 2-sentence prompt and see what we get. Did you get something right away?
Yeah. I mean, again, I did it in 4 different vibe coding tools to see sort of how each of them interpreted it. I started with 2, and then I was playing around with more, and then I tried 2 others as well later on. And just sort of saw what happened, and very quickly they were useful, but they needed work, to get to the point that I was relying on them, though. And
you were writing these as a web app, right? I mean, that was okay.
So how did you host this? Is a dumb question, but how and where did you host them then?
Yeah, so the different services basically have different options for that, and eventually the one that I ended up using and focusing on is Lovable, which is a pretty popular vibe coding app, and they have hosting built in as one of their options. One of the other services I used was Bolt, and they will publish out to another service called Netlify. And you can do stuff for free, but you hit certain limits, and you have to pay monthly subscription fees for all of these. Mine is still hosted on Lovable, though Lovable also then lets you put your own domain on it. So I have, it's still technically hosted at Lovable, but I have my own domain for the.
Is it lilalex.com?
It is not.
No, we won't give out the domain name. I love it.
I haven't given anyone the domain name. So
you call it Lil Alex, which Paris Martineau, as a fan of Taskmaster, would appreciate, right?
Yeah. I use the Taskmaster logo.
Oh wow!
It is a reference to Taskmaster. If it doesn't make any sense if you don't know the TV show Taskmaster, but it is a sort of joking reference. And I actually have one of the lines that comes up in Taskmaster all the time is all the information is in the task, and so that's like the subhead.
Oh, I like it. That's good. That's good.
The app. I think I put a picture in the. I think I put a screenshot in one of the articles. There's 2 articles about it, and one of them should have a screenshot with and I used the font. This actually took a while. This took a few days to get it to properly recognize the font that they use in Taskmaster, which I shouldn't have wasted 2 or 3 days getting the right font to work. Yeah, there it is. And so like that, just the way the little Alex,
that typewriter font,
the typewriter font.
A good typography there. It's very I respect that.
Now you're not writing this for anybody but Mike Masnick, right?
Nope. It is, and I've had a couple people since I published about it. I had a few people say, "Oh, it sounds like the
Kathy
features."
Tellis told me,
yeah.
You tell Mike I want that.
Yeah, she's one of the people who asked. She was like, "Can I just get an account on it? Because it sounds like and I'm just
sounds perfect."
Yeah, and I get that, and I could open it up. I turned off the ability for anyone else to sign up for an account. I could open it up and I could but it's
no.
It's not like the whole point of it. There's a few things to it. One is like the whole point is like that it's customized to me.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly messing with it. So I'm constantly adding things and changing it. And if somebody else is using it, then I'm going to mess them up at some point.
Now you're doing tech support, and now it's
awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's actually every coder's dream to write a program that needs no documentation, no support, doesn't have to serve anybody but yourself.
Customers.
Yeah, no
customers. That's you've achieved that dream. So Mike, I'm curious if you think that, sort of like projecting all the trends that are happening around this sort of thing into the future. For example, Microsoft came out with a natural language interface for Copilot+ PCs where you can change settings on those devices by talking at it. And then you're talking about vibe coding, which is essentially using natural language prompting, which we can assume will get smarter and more user-friendly in the future. Are we looking at a future where our devices are basically AI and we just tell it what we want, and vibe coding type? Future vibe coding is essentially a replacement for apps, and the Copilot thing that Microsoft's doing is a replacement for settings, and eventually we're just talking, right, to the device.
Yeah, it depends, right? I mean, I think it works for certain types of apps and probably doesn't work for other types of apps, but I do think that we're kind of heading towards that. It may also require kind of rethinking certain aspects of things that we sort of take for granted now, like how and where is data hosted, who has access to that data, and what can they do with it. I think we've grown up in a world now for the last however many years where the data and the app are intertwined. If you're using an app, that app has control of your data. And I don't think we've ever fully thought through the implications of that. And we could live in a world where the data is entirely separate from the app, and maybe the data has its own permission structure as well. And the app is allowed to access your data for certain reasons and not for others. There's a bunch of different things that could happen along those lines. But, the issues and certainly the risks of going to a purely vibe coded thing is obviously there are security questions and privacy questions. For me, the threat model and risk of that is not huge for a task app. It's not like if somebody got into my task app, they're not gonna, it's not a huge concern. But there are certain other apps where security matters quite a bit, and then there are other cases, obviously, where, there are social components to certain apps that are important, and that's harder to vibe code. I am hopeful that as we see more decentralized systems, whether it's Mastodon or Blue Sky or whatever, that, you can begin to work in some of that. The fact that you have these protocol-based systems, that you could combine vibe coding apps with that, the sort of decentralized social data that will allow you to do some cool things. But right now, it would be pretty tough to just fully build an app that requires social aspects as a vibe coding.
For sure, yeah. And I tend to think that the vibe coding that we're doing today is going to be done by a kind of assistant. I really believe in the future of assistants. Where instead of chat bots or we have an assistant who knows us intimately, lives on our glasses or whatever. And instead of vibe coding, we just tell the assistant, hey, just make this thing happen. And the assistant, agentic system, vibe codes for us.
Yeah. And interestingly, actually, Lovable, which is, again, the vibe coding service that I've been using, that I focused on and been using, that built and controls little Alex for now. They just introduced an agentic feature because before it was always just prompt and it would respond to the prompt and it had this sort of history, but now it tries to do things in a more agentic way. And so I've been experimenting with that, because I just got that feature about a week ago, and I've been trying to add something. And at first I was really excited because I thought it did the whole thing where it's I need to think through all this stuff. How do I explained the feature that I wanted, the very simple thing that I thought I wanted it to do. And it's now been 4 or 5 days of it almost working and not working, and me telling it over and over again, this is not actually working.
So do you have to
this is a stopper a lot in vibe coding, where you can get so far and then suddenly you hit a wall.
Yeah. And there are a few tricks that I've learned from folks about how you get around that. My favorite one, which has been pretty effective, though I was trying it last night and it didn't quite get there yet. I'm so close to having this feature done. It's so frustrating. Is you tell it, you basically say hey, we've tried a bunch of stuff. This isn't working. Can you think through carefully the 5 to 7 possible ways to fix this, distill it down to the 1 or 2 that you think is probably the best, and recommend which course of action you think we should take before you go and take it. And then it sort of walks through and you see the whole thing, and then it'll make a recommendation and you can say, okay, let's try that. And that has fixed some of the in the almost every time that I've come across a problem where it just keeps doing the wrong thing, including getting that typewriter font to work. Telling it that finally worked. The thing that I'm working on now, which I'll just tell you, like, the feature that I'm trying to add now is actually a really simple one, which is I just want a native mobile app for it, so that basically if there's a story I find that I want to write about, I'll dump it into little Alex as a task with a link to the story, and I can take some notes and everything like that. And so I had it build a bookmarklet for me, which is in my browser. So if I'm just reading on my desktop and I see a story, I can click the bookmarklet, which I have named Feed Alex. So I can feed Alex with a story to then write about. But if I find a story on my mobile device and I want to dump it in, right now I have to sort of copy and paste the URL into it, which I could do, but it's a little bit annoying. And so what I wanted to do is be able to natively share it and just click the share button within mobile Chrome and have it pop up as an option to turn it into a task. And so that required creating an Android app. And for whatever reason, I can either so it wrote a mobile app for me, an Android app, and gave me the APK. And I can either get it to work where the app works, but when I try and share, when I go to a website and I click the share button, it's not an option in there, which defeats the purpose. Or the share button shows up and the app immediately crashes as soon as you click it. And so I'm trying to get it to figure out how to, something is corrupted in there somehow, and I keep getting it to go back and forth.
So every time you adjust it, do you have to reload it and to
Yes.
post it anew? And does that ever screw the whole thing up?
Well, which part? The mobile app or the web app?
Any of them? You're making an adaptation, and then it's changing the whole code, right?
Yeah, so when it changes the code, it gives you a preview version that you can play around with and make sure that it's okay. And then once you're okay with it, you can click publish, and that'll publish it to the live app. Both the live app and the preview app are run off a Supabase database as well, which is another third-party service, which Lovable integrates with nicely, but also means that Lovable doesn't have access to my database. They don't have access to the data. They just integrate with it. There's an API key exchange going on there. So I can test everything before I publish it live.
You basically have a dev server and a production server, and you push it.
Have you, in this process, have you learned anything about coding, or have you learned only about how to deal with AI?
Yeah, I've definitely learned stuff about coding.
Really? So you've had to look at the code from time to time?
Not all that often. For the most part, but yes, occasionally. So two examples of that. So one is with the font, where I couldn't get it to recognize the right font. I finally went into the code and I figured out what it was, where it basically had before it had the font, because the font is a public domain font that anyone can use, but it didn't have access to it. And so it wanted me to upload a copy of it. And I uploaded it, and it had a different name. It had written into the code one name, and I uploaded it with a different name. And I told it that, but it really had trouble with that. And I finally went into the code and said, you keep pointing to the wrong name. You're naming the font incorrectly. And then it finally realized, but I only saw it
because you looked at the code.
Because I looked at the code.
Right.
But that was one of the few times I had to do that. With getting the native mobile version, the APK, onto my phone has involved a little bit more code, because it keeps pushing me to use command line tools, which I was like, wow, I thought I had given up on command line tools a long time ago. And so I keep going back and forth, and it's like, there are like little aspects that I remember from 30 years ago where I'm like, okay, I know how to change directory, but it's been a little while. I'm like, am I messing up stuff? So that's like bringing stuff back into my brain, and it is occasionally telling me to write commands where I'm like, if it wanted to really fuck me over badly, it probably could, because I'm sort of willing to take the commands it's telling me to put into the command line.
But you gotta show it who's boss. I mean, Sergey Brin said that the best way to get good results is to threaten AI with physical violence.
I don't know.
So
I don't know if I agree with that.
That's mean.
You may
Mike, how
regret that
far
in the
are we
years
from
to
Mike
come.
Elgin's view of just tell your agent to make it and then let me use it?
I think we're still a ways away from that. I mean, it totally depends on what it is that you want to do and sort of how complex. And, it's interesting, especially since when I started doing this, as I said, I used 4 different platforms, and it was really fascinating to me to see how each of them interpreted different things and like which elements it thought was most important. And it shows up in weird. So like another feature that I added, this is after I wrote the piece, so I didn't even mention this in the article I wrote about it. I added a feature last month, which is great, and I love it, which is I now have a calendar booking feature. Like if I want to set up a meeting for someone, I can send them links, and they can of like different times, like. It's a little different than like Calendly, where it doesn't show somebody a calendar, but I can select on my calendar, which I have now integrated with an API, integrated into Little Alex. I can see my Google Calendar, click on certain times, and it'll give me a list of links. I can like email them to someone, say, oh, I'm available at these 3 times or whatever. They can click and book directly, and it shows up as a task for me in the thing, and it shows up on my calendar. And when I told it that that's what I wanted to build, and it got really, really focused on trying to build like something similar, but it was more about like letting a bunch of people figure out a time to meet kind of thing, instead of, I just want to be able to look at my calendar, click sometimes, and send people a bunch of links and say, pick which of these times you want. And eventually I was like, no, let's put that part aside. Maybe that's an interesting tool. Maybe we'll build that later. But right now I just want this. Yeah. So it just has, it just decides. Sometimes it sort of picks up on certain things that it decides are more important to you. And you have to sort of be like, no. And so I always worry a little about the purely agentic stuff, because, and also you sort of learn as you give something instructions. It's like the classic, when I don't remember, like elementary school or something, you'd always do this one thing where like you'd have a teacher tell kids like, tell me how to make a peanut butter sandwich or something. And you interpret everything that the kids say totally literally. So it'll be like spread peanut butter. So you spread it on the desk instead of the bread. Because if they don't tell you directly, spread it on the bread. There's like all these little interpretation things that people don't think through and make assumptions around. And like the AI is still in that thing where like it will make assumptions, and some of the time those will be correct, but often they'll be like, that's not what I meant, And so I'm not like, the agentic stuff is cool in that like its willingness to sort of go out and do like multiple steps on things, but I still feel like you need a human in the loop for a lot of these to be like, this is what I really meant, or to issue corrections.
Yeah, I think in general, AI is going to regress to the mean. I mean, it's trained on other people's work, and so it's going to do what most people want it to do. If you want to do something that's out of that, average, you're going to have to work a little harder to puch it out to those edges.
I think there are elements of that, and in fact, like there were little things like when it created Little Alex, like it really set it up with like sign up here as a feature, and I had to be like,
I don't. Everybody does.
I don't want that. Like it's just for me. Like don't let anyone sign up.
No signups.
Do you do any role prompting to make it do the kinds of things at the level that you want? Tell it you're an amazing engineer. You're the most incredible app developer. Do you do that kind of stuff, or you?
I haven't done any of that. Potentially.
I can't see Mike sucking up to a computer.
Good. Don't suck up to it.
It works.
it's funny because I do that with the other way that I use AI, which I had written about like a year ago, though that's also advanced a lot, is as an editing tool for my writing.
Oh, good. I want to hear more about that too. Yeah.
There I have it very much like I have a bunch of prompts that are pre-written prompts that I have as just macros that sort of lay out like you are this, sophisticated, harsh but honest. Like I forget all the terminology I have in there. I have like this whole prompt worked out, and the tool that I use also like. They let you build in the system prompt for the editor as well. And so there's like a whole bunch of like little tweaks, and it's like there's a really, really involved and detailed system prompt that gets at that, like, telling the AI what role it's playing as an editor, and that it's not there to write for me. It's only there to be to critique what I've written, and it can make suggestions and say like I would rewrite this sentence, or like you're missing a paragraph here that you have to explain this. All the things that like a good editor will do, as opposed to like so many people only think of AI as like pure content generation, as opposed to
big mistake.
Yeah, like I use it as it is a brainstorming. It is an editor sitting on my shoulder, helping me out along the way. And I have some prompts, depending on the stories, I use different prompts for different things, where I like literally will have it go through the piece and just say, find the weakest point here. Like, what are people going to argue over this piece, and how do I sort of pre-answer those criticisms?
One of the things that I do exactly what you do, which is I have a whole Apple Notes file full of canned prompts that I wrote, and one of them is a fact-checking prompt, which is I found very helpful, and I used it actually this morning. But what I do with it is I basically, when I'm done, and by the way, I wrote this column published Friday where I advise people, if you want to get smarter instead of dumber when you're using AI, don't use AI at all until the end. When you're done, you think you've done your best, then run it through AI and see what it says. So for example, the fact-checking one, I ran my whole column through it this morning, and there's a ton of role prompting there. It's like, you are like a super stringent, thorough, fact checker, that highly sought after. I just go on and on about how hardcore it is. And your client is somebody who's equally exacting about getting the facts exactly right and verifiable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I run through I just dump my whole column in there, and it literally takes every sentence and individually verifies it. And I actually made a change to my column before submitting it this morning. Basically, what it was is I had.
It's not this one. This one's a couple of days old, so it's not yet on Machine Society.
Not Machine Society, on Computer World. Was published Friday. But a different column I published this morning, it actually caught me on something, because what I had said was I made a statement of fact when in fact it was just a claim by the company. So I went in and made little things according to the company, and that's the kind of thing the AI is so good at. But don't make it write your thing for you, man.
And that's the thing. Like I write the entire article top to bottom before I even touch the AI part of it, because it is not there to write for me. It is entirely there as an editorial help, and it's gotten so much more powerful over the last few years. And the tool that I use for that is lex.page, which, the team there is really focused on building tools to help writers, not to write for people. And so they keep introducing new features that are exactly for that kind of thing, where you could make it right for you. You can make any of these things right for you if you really wanted to, but all of the features they're introducing are so focused on the editing process and improving what you've written rather than doing the work for you. And I had said this somewhere else, I can't even remember where now, but it's funny, for all the talk of how AI is supposed to make you more efficient. My writing has actually gotten slower, because the editor rips apart what I write all the time and makes me rewrite it. And in the past, I would write stuff, I would hand it off to my human editor, and I would forget about it. Whereas now I'm spending more time on each article, but I think the end result is that they're better and stronger.
Does it have bad editing ticks? You always say that, but you're wrong.
There are some. And so what I've tended to do over time, when I discover those that keep coming up, I add to the prompt or to the system prompt.
Don't bug me about.
Right. Like there are things that I know you want to do, but like, and you know, the other thing that I've done with it is like, it has a bunch of examples of like some of my favorite TechDirt articles to be like, this, you're writing for this publication. The audience is sophisticated. You don't have to explain like, you know, basic things that they're already going to be familiar with. You know, you don't have to like present the other side of everything, you know, like there are a bunch of things and ticks that I've sort of trained it out of. Some of those, you know, it's an ongoing process, but over time I begin to see the kind of like, there was a funny one recently, and I had copied the thing where it complained to me about, I'd written this article. I can't even remember which one it was about. This was maybe a month or two ago. I'd written this one. It was on some sort of legal case, and there was like this sort of deep procedural thing, and I went really deep explaining the legal weeds of it, and it complained. It's like, you've gone way too deep into the legal weeds here. And I wrote back to it. I said, this is for TechDirt. Like, we specialize in going deep into the legal weeds. And it responded to me. It said, this is not an exact quote, but it's really, really close to what the exact quote was. And it said, yes, but you know, as deep as you've gone into the legal weeds, it obscures how fucking wild this story really is.
That's good. That's actually good input. That's interesting.
Yeah.
We're talking to Mike Masnick. He is the founder and editor-in-chief at TechDirt.com, which everybody is asked to read. And we're talking about his most, he wrote 2 pieces on this, but the most recent one came out last month, How I Built a Task Management Tool for Almost Nothing. Is this still basically free? You've limited yourself to the free prompts?
No, I explained in there that I pay whatever it is, $20 a month for Lovable.
Yeah,
but
for
that's
100 prompts. Yeah.
For 100. It's really sneaky because you get 5 free prompts a day. So, and now it's a little weird because they have the agentic thing, which counts prompts slightly differently than before. So you can actually have a lot more than that in some ways, or a lot fewer depending on how you use it. But yeah, it's enough that, because the other thing
$25 a month is what this is costing.
Okay, $25 a month. And basically, like, I just put in like, you know, every few days I'll put in like half an hour in the evening on it. Right. It's not something that I'm spending a whole bunch of time on. And like, I'm not doing it during the day. It's like after all the other work is done, I'll put in 30 minutes to try and get something to work. And like, you know, with like the Android app, I haven't been able to get to work, but it's been like 3 days of like 30 minutes each where it's like, oh, I'll try a few things and then I'll give up for today.
Are you surprised with how well this has worked?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, the app is like, it's like, I use it constantly. It organizes my day, and it has been like since 3 days into the process of trying to make it. And you know, I've made it better and I've added more things to it over time, but like it's like a really powerful app that I just created entirely by myself. And I'm still sort of in shock at how good it is.
Yeah. That's also one of the cool things is you can edit it, you can modify it as you use it.
Yep.
So it will evolve. It can continue to evolve.
Yep.
That's really amazing. We're talking to Mike Masnick. We got to take a little break. Mike, there's so many other things everybody wants to ask you about. Blue Sky and stuff. Can you stick around for a few more minutes?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, watch out, Mike. You're in for it now.
Well, we don't, you know, Mike is such a busy guy and we don't get to talk to him as much as we'd like to. So we use your name in vain all the time. You should know that. So anyway, we're glad to have you today. More of Intelligent Machines and of course, our very special fill-in host today, Mike Elgin's. Great to have you. Jeff Jarvis, well, you know, it's always great to have you. So thank you, everybody, for being here. We will have more in just a moment. Before we leave this little Alex, just before and after your relationship with AI, has it changed?
Good question.
Based on the vibe coding experiment?
Well, and I guess I realize now you've been using AI and editing and other things too. So
yeah.
Over the years, then, has it changed?
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly seen more of the value of it. I mean, obviously, like when ChatGPT first launched and things like that, you're like, oh, this is kind of cool, but is it really useful? And you know, obviously, like one of the very first things I ever did with ChatGPT was like tell it to write a TechDirt article, and it sucked. You know, it couldn't do that.
Right.
And so you're like, okay, is this ever going to be anything more than a toy? And the technology has gotten so much better. The fundamental, the models themselves certainly have gotten so much better. And I think a lot of people who used it early on and didn't use it later haven't realized how much the models have changed over time. But then also all of these tools that are built up around it, right? So like Lex as an editing tool, like has so many of these really clever, smart features built in. And they have like a pretty interesting community as well. Like if Lex has a Discord where like when I started using it, I was barely even using the AI features because I actually just liked the editor, like the screen was nice. I can't quite describe why. It just sort of, you know, I liked writing in Lex. And then I was asking people in the Discord, like, how are you actually using the AI features? And somebody, you know, wrote this thing about how like they had created a scorecard for anything that they wrote and said like, you know, rate this from 0 to, I think they had from like 0 to 2 or something on these different characteristics and make recommendations on like how to improve it. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So I created my own scorecard. And now when I write stuff as part of that editing process, I run, you know, everything I write against a scorecard. And in fact, I built in, I think I wrote about this last year. I built in, you know the famous Van Halen Eminem story, the writer story, right? The idea
they
where
said no black M&Ms, but the real reason they did it wasn't because they didn't want black M&Ms or whatever color, just to see if they had the promoter had read the contract.
Exactly. Yeah. So I built one of those kinds of things into it, in which I ask it how funny it thinks the article is, and you know, and I'm not trying to write for
you
humor.
don't want it to be funny necessarily,
right? And so I use that as sort of a check, you know, because like there's always like this concern of AI being too nice to you.
Right. Oh, you're so funny, Mike. I love your sense of humor.
Right. Yeah. And so I have in there that, and there's another one too, where it's like, it's basically designed to like, will it still tell me if it disagrees with me?
I love that.
And I use that constantly as kind of a check, but like, you know, like Lex as a tool that is really focused on editing and for writers and assisting writers, not writing for them. They've built in all of these features all along that I think makes the AI, the underlying AI more powerful. And in the case with Lex, you can use like any model that they've hooked up to. I think they have like 20 different options. And so there are times too where I'll like have, you know, Claude review an article and I'm not sure if I really like what's coming from them. And so I'll switch it to you know, one of the GPT models or Gemini or something else. And the feature I keep asking them for, and they haven't quite done yet, is I want to have like a panel of editors like that are each, you know, the different foundation models and maybe even like different characteristics, and say like, have them be like my panel of editors who can
argue with each other
about like, oh, you know, oh, what you really should do is this, and no, it should be like I actually feel I would get a lot of value out of that, but I sometimes sort of fake it where I'll ask multiple models, and they have like these different editor personas built in, so I'll like switch among the personas as well, and you get sort of different responses, and it's kind of an interesting way to get a sense of all of it. And so like my take on it is like the underlying technology is really powerful, but it often depends on how you use it and kind of what's wrapped around it. So like Lex and Lovable, these are like purpose-built tools that use the underlying code to do something useful, that if you're just going to like ChatGPT and saying like, do this for me, like, yeah, you can do some of it, but like having it in a more directed fashion is much more powerful.
Do you use this as your CMS now for TechDirt?
No.
Okay.
No.
This is just your writing tool instead of say using Google Docs or Microsoft Word.
Exactly.
Are you using Notebook LM?
I've used it a few times and sort of played around with it, but I haven't gone super deep with it. I'm curious if you're using it in an interesting way. Like I haven't found a really useful reason for it.
So the next book after Linotype, I'm keeping everything in PDF so I can use Notebook LM and see how it works for me. I've used it so far. I'm at the early research stage now. So I've used it so far to summarize some things. I'm getting into the weeds of how the discovery of the amplifier and vacuum triode tubes. And so it's way beyond me. So it's been great at explaining things to me that I don't understand. Hoping that's right, but it's doing a good job of that. I use the deep research on Gemini, different from Notebook LM, to I wrote what I wanted to write first. I agree with that as a rule.
Yeah.
I do my own thing first, but then I want to go into it and say, how do you just explore this topic?
Yeah.
Well, good news, because Stephen Johnson of Notebook LM will be our guest next week. You can ask him.
Fantastic. Yeah. I mean, to Jeff's point, I think Notebook LM is fantastic at learning something super complex. I read a ton of scientific press. I start with a press release and I go to the paper, and then the paper is a 65-page scientific paper, and I want to understand more than the press release, but I don't. I'm not really in a state of mind to read a paper like that. So I'll throw it in Notebook LM. And if it's really complicated, it's in the astrophysics or something like that, I'll go ahead and let it do a fake podcast for me. And then I'll look at the FAQ, and then I'll say, explain it to me like I'm a high school senior. And then once I kind of get that, I'll say, okay, explain it to me like I'm a high school, college senior or whatever. So I just build the complexity up. But it's a fantastic way to grapple with highly complex technical material.
Yeah. I could see it being useful in that context. I don't often. I guess I haven't needed to do that in particular.
Yeah. You know your stuff.
Yeah.
So, Mike, let's talk about the moderation curve. First of all, you're on the board of Blue Sky now. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How's that been going?
God's work.
It's exciting and busy and crazy, and it's a very interesting company that takes a very different approach to these things, and I'm excited to be there. I sort of view myself as someone who advises them quite a bit on things that they're doing, but they're an amazing team, and they make all the decisions. And so I'm really
impressed with the number of things using @Proto for more than just social, more than just microblogging. It's turning out to be kind of a powerful
what else do you like best,
protocol.
Leo?
Pardon me?
What other things using it do you think are successful?
Gosh, off the top of my head, I can't remember, but I keep seeing people using it.
Yeah.
If you look on Hacker News, there's a lot of people, showing up. Oh yeah, I used @Proto to do this and that. It's really surprisingly flexible and very interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of where a lot of the excitement is right now, is seeing what developers are building.
Not creating another Mastodon, but something else entirely.
Right, and some of it is, and like, I think this is natural. It's like the first things that people build tend to be recreating things that already existed. So there's like, there's like an Instagram clone and there's a TikTok clone, and people are trying to do that. But we're starting to see people sort of experimenting with like, what crazy, totally out there concept can you build using the @protocol? And that's where I think we're eventually going to find these like the big breakthroughs where everyone's like, oh, of course, that was like the obvious thing that nobody had ever thought of before.
Right. Surprised to see Linda Yaccarino retire after just 2 years. That's okay. You don't have to say
anything. Some people didn't think she would last 1 year.
She lasted a long time.
Yeah, but I did not see that coming.
Really?
Sorry.
I caught a reference in there.
By the way, we have submitted an application apparently to be a trusted verifier, which is another nice feature of Blue Sky. So if you see that come across the transom, just put in a good word.
Mike, can I recommend a feature for Blue Sky, which I think could make it very killer? So this is something I used to do on Google Plus, which is that you can do posts that are completely private, posts that are just go to a few people and so on. And if you build it the right way, people can do life logging
Yep.
and basically capture their personal journal, all the stuff, everything that they do all the time, and then just say, 30% of them can be public as
Yep.
posts. And that makes it really
Yep.
powerful for certain types of people, especially when
Yeah.
we have all these tools where we can funnel content from our life, pictures and so on, into a tool like that.
Yeah, there's definitely discussion along those lines. The main issue there right now is that the protocol, as written, is designed to be, public, a public protocol, and there are some tricky aspects to private content on a public protocol, right? Because you want third-party apps to be able to access the content, but if you want private content, how do you handle that sort of handoff? There are ways to do it, but it's tricky. And so the team has been public about this. Like, they know that sort of private content is definitely a feature that has to be on there, but it's a big project, and the team is very, very thoughtful about how they implement everything. I mean, again, like, if you look at all of the sort of parts that they've implemented, they're very, very thoughtful about, like, we're not just going to sort of willy-nilly, create this and sort of see what happens, but rather, like, we want to keep it true to the overall mission of being an open social protocol. And so it's on the list. The team has talked about it publicly. They know that they have to create, the ability to post privately. I agree with you. I think it's not just an important feature, it's a necessary feature these days, and would open up a whole bunch of new opportunities and new ideas, and make various services, not just Blue Sky, but various services on that protocol more useful. But it's tricky to do it right, and it would be easy to do it in a way that leads to problems down the road. And so, let them get it right is what I'd say. But definitely on the roadmap, definitely something people are thinking about.
What about business models for Blue Sky?
Yeah.
I want it to be alive. I want it to keep going.
Yeah, you and me both. Definitely. And again, like, Jay has talked about this publicly a few times. I want to step on her toes in terms of, like, what the plans are. They've talked about doing some things that are like subscription type features, but the real focus is on, the more value that Blue Sky itself can enable. There may be points where, there may be, elements of payment rails that go into place. If people are providing value, or really what they want to do is, help creators themselves, people who are using the tools themselves to make money. And if Blue Sky can help enable that and take a small cut along the way, then again, sort of everyone is aligned and everyone is happy. And it's not about extracting money from people, but rather just aligning value between all of the different people. And so there's a lot of stuff planned. And again, it's all about doing the implementation in a way that is thoughtful and helpful, and not problematic, and not something that we're going to have to rip up, 6 months or a year from now. And so some of this stuff takes a frustratingly long amount of time to get it right, to think through all of the different things and the different trade-offs, and then to implement it in a useful way. But is definitely top of mind, and definitely part of the plan is, building in a business model that is not extractive and not painful and not harming users, in part because it is an open protocol. And if Blue Sky itself decides to create a business model that is just, pulling everyone's data and doing evil shit with it, then people will just, rebuild, a Blue Sky elsewhere using the at protocol, because that's what we allow. And so the goal is, like, can we build a setup that people value and are happy to pay for it because they feel they're getting value that is worth more than what they're paying for it.
People may not know Mike Masnick, besides being a great writer, editor, software developer. He's also a game designer. 1 billion users just recently closed its Kickstarter campaign. Is it due out any day now?
It is it's somewhere in the Pacific Ocean right now.
On a container, huh?
It is on a container ship. I had actually just checked a few hours ago, and there's not an update on where the ship is. It had docked in Japan, and then it's somewhere in the Pacific Ocean on its way to Long Beach. I think it's supposed to land in Long Beach in like 4 or 5 days.
Are there tariffs for games?
There are. I was just looking at a form that says there's a 20% fentanyl tariff,
Oh, good
a
Lord.
10% China tariff. So
God.
I was just literally an hour ago looking at the tariffs that we are paying.
China will pay the tariff.
Yeah, it turns
That's how
out
it
not
works,
so
according
much. Not so much.
So that's coming out of your pocket because you've
Yes.
already charged people for
Yes.
the game.
Oh,
Yes.
ouch.
Yeah. It's better than when it was at 154%. But yeah, we're paying for the tariffs, and so
Well, thank you for doing your part to stop
bill.
the fentanyl epidemic that is sweeping this nation. I appreciate
Oh
what you're
gosh,
doing.
yeah, but yeah, and then we're going to find out what the process is. I mean, we still have to have the games go through customs, and we'll see what happens there. But
They
put on the rundown.
may say, hey, wait a minute, you can't let this into the country. This is subversive.
So I put on the rundown. I didn't know this existed. It's been there for a bit. But Kickstarter has a tariff calculator,
Oh,
Yes.
so you can figure
I
out
saw that in
how
the
and
rundown.
where to make things. It's fascinating. It's a
Yeah.
good service. It's
guess they
unfortunately
need that.
necessary service. Yeah.
Yeah.
so you
Yeah.
printed these in China?
we did. We had gone through. We talked to a whole bunch of different companies with printers in a bunch of different locations. We explored printing in the U.S. We explored printing in Poland, in Vietnam, and in China. And it made sense to do it in China. It was just a really experienced team. They've done a whole bunch of games, and the product quality, they sent us samples and stuff, was just so far above and beyond everybody else, and was price competitive. Even with the tariffs, it's still. It still would have been more expensive to do it in the U.S., to be honest. But that's partly because there's only like one company in the U.S. that can print at this kind of scale.
Yeah. How many backers? You have 1,800 backers?
Yeah, but a bunch of them ordered multiple copies. I think we ended up printing somewhere 2,800 copies of the game. So
And the game, of course, lets you build the biggest social network.
yes. It's really fun. I have to say, I am biased. I helped create it, but it's a really fun card game.
Are you gonna do more?
We'll see. It's a lot of work. It's even like running the Kickstarter campaign and we almost didn't get this funded, to be honest with you. I mean, I was a little disappointed. Like the reaction to the game. It may have just been timing too. We ran the Kickstarter in November, December. I think a lot of people were just kind of like checked out of everything at that point. And we almost didn't make it. And really it was Blue Sky that stepped up. And, on the final day, I sort of posted to Blue Sky, like, I don't think we're going to hit the threshold on Kickstarter. And all these people came out of the woodwork on Blue Sky and were like, let's get this funded, and really did. And so it's a story of community that I actually think is pretty impressive how many people stepped up. I think at the final check about 40% of our backers came from Blue Sky.
So the engagement there is beautiful. I find it's really wonderful.
Mike's Copia Institute is a really great kind of think tank promoting the stuff that I know all of you care a lot about. We do as well. And you guys have done a number of games too. In fact, you can play some of them online.
Yeah. We have
Trust and Safety Tycoon. We've played that we played it here on the air.
Yeah.
It's not easy. Believe me, to be on the Trust and Safety team.
And I will give you a little preview that there's a new one coming out soon.
Oh, good.
I can't say quite when, but soon. There's a new digital game.
I like the idea of gaming as a way of informing people.
Yeah.
About the difficulty, for instance, of being a moderator on a modern social network. That's really cool. It's a new kind of educational software, I guess.
Yeah.
I really like it.
Very sophisticated idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, of course, it's Mike, right?
Yeah. I mean, somebody asked me recently, like, what is my job? What do I do? And I said, I think I'm an educator, right? I mean, I think
ultimately, that's right.
But it'd be quicker to tell you what I don't do. How about this? Yes. But Mike, you're very accomplished, and we're just touching on some of the things you've done. But I want to make sure that the audience knows your most stunning achievement, which is that you coined the phrase Streisand effect.
Really? I didn't know that came from
2005.
you. That's great.
Yeah, that's also a me thing.
Yeah, she got more famous for it than he did.
That's the point.
Yeah. I think it was, so in the process of that becoming famous, I got interviewed on All Things Considered on NPR in like 2005, 2006 or something around there, where they wanted to talk to me about the Streisand effect. And I'm blanking. What is the guy's name? There was like one of the famous All Things Considered reporters who's got the deep baritone newscaster voice. I can't remember his name. Robert Siegel. Right?
Oh,
yeah.
Is it? Yeah. So he's interviewing me and he's like, why didn't you name this after yourself?
I don't
Because I don't have a house in Malibu.
Right.
No helicopters flew over your house. Your wedding.
So I want you to know that I used that phrase last night. Just last night is
I
the
use
most
it all the
recent time I used it. Yeah.
It's a lesson people never learn. It's unbelievable.
I actually just finished this. It's not published yet, but it's going to be published in about 20 minutes. Another story about another Streisand effect situation.
Fantastic.
Because people need to learn and people don't know.
They don't. Jeff, you wanted to ask him about the latest Supreme
We had a
Court
discussion last week
decisions.
about the two federal court decisions at the same building that you explained wonderfully on fair use.
Yeah.
You said essentially conflicting decisions from the same district court.
Where do you think this goes?
Nobody knows, right? And I think I tried to express that in my article, which is like there's a dozen different court cases in a dozen different courtrooms, and the appeals courts are going to have to flesh it out, and then eventually the Supreme Court is going to have to make a decision. The fear is that a bad ruling, which is possible, would effectively destroy these technologies.
Yep.
The ruling basically was about whether it's fair use. The two rulings were about whether it's fair use for an AI to ingest copyrighted material for its training. One judge said, well, it's okay if they buy the books. The other judge said, no, it hurts the market value of those books, and so it's not fair use. Completely conflicting points of view.
Yeah, and this is sort of the reality of fair use itself, which is that you have this 4-factor test, which is written into the law, but in practice, you're allowed to weigh the 4 factors however you want, and there's some previous rulings that sort of say like these factors should weigh more than those factors, but really it almost always comes down to 2 different factors. One is the nature of the work and whether or not it's transformative, and then the other is the impact on the market. And these 2 rulings out of the same courthouse from different judges, effectively was a demonstration of, one judge weighting the transformative nature more and the other judge weighting the value on the market more. Though I think he got it wrong. And I was surprised too, because both of these judges are actually pretty well known for being pretty thoughtful, especially on copyright cases. I've followed both of them on copyright cases where I thought they were very careful and thoughtful. There are other judges that I know are terrible on copyright, but these 2 are both very good. And so I was a little surprised by Judge Chabria's ruling, where he was basically like, well, because, if AI could create a biography of someone famous, people won't write or buy biographies. And I was like, I don't see how
that
that's
made no sense
true.
at all.
No.
Yeah.
Tell Robert Caro that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too, because he mentions Robert Caro in that, where he's like, well, of course, people will still buy him because it's Robert Caro.
Yeah.
And I was like, but that undermines your entire point, where it's like, people will buy, and like,
if it's good, they'll buy it. But if it's not, then they'll just use the AI.
And like, I use the example in my write-up about it. It's like, last year I had gone to Ford's Theater in DC, and in there they have this stack of like every book ever published about Lincoln, and they think is like, the president who has been written about the most, and it's like 4 stories high or whatever of just books piled up. And more books. Yeah, there it is. Exactly. Like more books keep coming out all the time about
it. Hasn't hurt the market for Lincoln biographies.
No.
Technically, it's 4-story and 7.
There you go. Yeah, very good.
That's a deep cut. Wow.
So Gary Steingart's.
It's funny. I was just at Gettysburg where I heard the the 407.
Yeah.
It was really funny too. I'm going complete tangent wise, but at Gettysburg in the museum where they talk about Lincoln's speech, they also show the contemporaneous quotes in the newspaper about his speech. And there's one wall where there's people praising it, and there's one wall where people are like completely mocking it as silly, useless comments on the war. And
there's all the people in the back who said, "Speak up! I can't." What?
There's an amplifier
with the horn
little
thing.
tangent is Gary
Mike
Steingart.
also does a wonderful podcast, Control Alt Speech, which you probably should be listening to from now on instead of this one. Mike Masnick and Ben Whitelaw. If you really, honestly, if you're not consuming all of the wonderful things Mike does, he is the hardest working man in this business.
He does God's work at every turn.
Yeah, we're so grateful that you were able to take an hour with us out of your busy day. I really appreciate it, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
We just really appreciate all you do. And you're so right on. And we need you now more than ever. This is a very, very difficult time for this nation. And I think the words that you're writing are so important. And I just hope you keep doing it. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. I will use this chance to then plug if people do want to support the work that we do. We're always looking for support. There is a tab at the top of Tech Dirt on the different ways that you can support Tech Dirt.
There's a Patreon. There's T-shirts. Yes. There's an insider shop. You can get the Tech Dirt crystal ball. I don't know. Sounds good. I'll take it. And then, of course, the games.
The framed portrait of Barbara Streisand's mansion.
We haven't done that. I had actually talked to Ken Adelman, who was the person who had taken the photo and got sued by Barbara Streisand, about trying to do something with that. And he's like, he was like, leave me out of this, please.
When you called him, you say, hey, I'm the guy who coined the term Streisand effect. Can we talk? That would be a great introduction.
It would be.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Yes,
Mike,
everybody should support them. But Mike, one little tip: I see you're taking Bitcoin donations, don't lose the password to the wallet.
Yes.
I'm just saying. We did that for a while, and I thank all our very generous donors. And your 7.85 Bitcoin are very safe.
Oh no!
In that wallet.
Oh no!
Well, here's the good news. I would have spent it years ago if I'd had access to it. So in a way, it's been a good savings account.
Yes, but a permanent one.
It's kind of, maybe it might be permanent. I don't know. Yeah. Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate it.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's always fun to talk to you guys.
Yeah. Thanks. Oh, we just love you. And anytime you feel like you're just in the mood to do another podcast, just let us know. I don't want to bug you, but we love having you on.
All right. All right.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks.
All right. Michael Masnick. We're going to take a little break and come back with more in just a bit. You're watching Intelligent Machines. Jeff Jarvis and Mike Elgin will weigh in on the AI news next. And there's a lot of it, but an awful lot of it. Hey, it's Leo Laporte. I hope you've enjoyed this little clip from our programming at TWiT.tv. For more, visit our website, TWiT.tv, or subscribe in your favorite podcast client. There's also a link somewhere down there.